Question of the morning, Brian Santiago, BYU Athletic Director, says the Cougars will never have a private equity firm be part of its sports programs. Why so adamant? We have a lot of answers that run along the lines of, as Steven says, because they already have private equity. Mark, because there's no need. Jenna, they're literally owned by a private equity firm. Pockets are deep. They are full of cash. They don't need to let somebody else in and help finance them. As John says, they are not funded by the state. So there it is, PK. All is well. Bank accounts are full. NIL money is paid. No need. Just no need.
Okay, that assumes then if there was a need that they would do it. Is that what Santiago would have said if all those things, I mean, they have the donors, and I assume owned is referencing the Latter-day Saint Church, and we've read reports about them and the I guess billions or millions that they have stock. I don't really care how much money they have and do whatever they want, but we've heard about that, so I guess that's the reference there. To what degree is that is the sponsoring institution giving the university money for its athletic program? I thought that they go to great lengths to tell us money isn't being used, or at least tithing money isn't being used. I don't know if general fund money, I don't know how the funds work and any of that. And so what does that mean? If they didn't have all that, would they do it? Is Santiago saying we have no need, or is he saying that we don't believe a private equity thing is the way to go, or is he saying both?
I don't know. I haven't heard that teased all the way out. I would think that off the top, they don't need it. They have enough billionaire boosters and entrepreneurs, and we know the companies. We've heard of that. So it just sounds like they're good to go. Now, good to go, that there's degrees to that. And maybe if this thing keeps accelerating, maybe we'll find out to what degree. Maybe you have money to compete at one level, but not money to compete at another level. And how badly do you want to get to that next level? And what are you willing to do? And I think really the word in this case, what would you be willing to compromise? Because I think the thought is with private equity, well, you are giving up some degree of control. Now, I think from one private equity firm to another, that stuff might work a little differently, but you'd definitely be giving up some level of control. So I don't think you do it unless you have to. And, if they weren't winning as much and they were short on money and they wanted more, where is the line? At what point do you compromise? Even if he said that now, I think that's one of those things, we've talked about this in life. You can think of, what you're going to do in a year or 2 or 5 or whatever. But we're old enough to have gone through that enough times that we realize, when you get there a year or 2 or 5 later, things look different. And guess what? I'm not going to do what I thought I was going to do 2 or 5 years ago. So I don't know what he would say to that, and I don't know if they would stick to it when they got to that point. Everything in college sports is changing so fast right now. I just think right now they have no interest in it because right now they got billionaire boosters, and they've got at least what they think they need right now, and then, we'll see going forward where things go.
Well, I can tell you that they thought they were underfunded compared to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech wallowed them both times last season. So if you're comfortable at that level, having a very nice season, but when you play the top dog, you get creamed both times, once on the road, once at a neutral field. And so are they comfortable with that? Because that's the reality. And speaking to BYU coaches, they outlined some of the costs and the defensive line. The front seven that Texas Tech was able to put out there, they said, was more than the entire defense, if not the entire team. So do they have enough? Enough for what? I mean,
Right.
that remains to be seen. What is enough for?
Yeah. And that's why I say 1 or 2 or 5 years, because right now it doesn't feel like, I don't think any of us have heard, like the finance, I mean, everything's going up, so the finance have gone up, but it doesn't sound like it's accelerated, right? And another year or two of losing to Texas Tech twice a year, again, that's one of those things in a couple of years people might feel differently. If you got a 6-game losing streak over 3 years and you keep bumping up against the same team in the conference title game, maybe people will need to plunk down or want to plunk down more money. And, 5 years out, we could have massive realignment. If the Big Ten decides to do some big 32-team national league and go all in and just say, forget the NCAA, we're just going to run our own thing and be our own thing and be the beast. If you have a chance to get into that, you might need to come up with a lot of money real quickly, and maybe that's a different scenario and you get a different answer. Or maybe billionaires just pony up. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I don't think that they will lose 6 times in the next 3 years because they're going to play Texas Tech every year. But it's already there. You lost to them in large part because they have the most money. Their softball team is ranked number 1 because they have the most money. Go look at the history. Just put Google seasons results by Texas Tech's softball team, and you can see it. You can just see how they were a decent program, but not at the level of an Oklahoma or a Texas until last year. And the record that they posted, the numbers will just jump out at you. And they had never won a Big 12 title ever. Now, sure, they had Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska back in former versions of the Big 12. I understand all that. But they hadn't gotten done. And they've had decent programs for a time. But they were sort of, a couple games, 2-3 games above 500, what have you. And then they go and do what they do. So that record last year will jump out at you. And then they lose. Oregon creams them in the playoff. And their number 1 booster says, well, we're not going to back off. In fact, I'm going to double down. So sure, BYU has money to compete if that's what you're satisfied with, but do you have enough money to win all the way, right? Because whatever level you are, you want more. Doesn't now, if you get to the top level, you want to continue, right? The athletic program's desire is not to go back. It is to continue or maintain or get to that level, increase it. So I don't know that I can sit here and say they have enough money, because it's enough money for what? To field a good team? Yeah. Is that good enough? Now, for me personally, yes, that is good enough. If I were a BYU fan and my team won 10, 11, 12 games virtually every year, I would be fine with it, 100%. And they lose and they don't ever win the national title, I would be fine with it. That I would have a lot of good times. To me, it's good times along the way rather than the final result, because the final result most often is going to be disappointing. Even Ohio State, right? Last year was great. This year, not so much. They lost the Big 12 title or Big 10 title game and then don't win it all in the playoff. So for them, that's a downer. For me, they had another banner season. So it depends on what you're looking for. What is acceptable for you? And then they have to decide, because I'm not sure that they have enough money to compete at the highest level. And everybody talks about, we just played Canales. Yeah, we're going to be great at both ends, and we're going to be aggressive. And you fill in the blank for every new coach across the country, man, woman, doesn't matter which sport. And they basically say the same thing on press conference hiring day, right? It doesn't vary that much. And Jared Calhoun, well, we got a 9 seed, so that's why I went to Cincinnati. I'm not allowed. I can say BS, but I can't say what that word is on the radio. Because if they had a 7 seed, that means you were going to stay?
Yeah.
No. You weren't going to stay. But you want to BS us during the press conference. So, wow, we got that 9 seed, so we're out the door. Okay, I think Iowa got a 9 seed and advanced. So you're just making stuff up. You're saying stuff to say it, to make yourself look good. Do they have enough money to win at a decent level? Yes. Do they have enough money to win at the most level, highest level? Don't think so. And at least not yet.
So does he have plans for that down the line? I mean, Brian Santiago, you've seen, and granted, it's probably a younger, feistier version of Santiago, but the fire still burns. The bonfire may not be 20 feet tall, but you could still warm yourself around the campfire that is his personality. I wonder what he wants. And I wonder what he's, how hard he's willing to push to get there, and how many conversations there are with how many billionaire donors to get whatever money they need. Because you're right, that Texas Tech defense, they put Bailey on one side and they put what's his face on the other side, and I'm blanking on his name, and that was ferocious. And you don't just get that. Well, you don't get it anywhere, but you certainly don't get it at Texas Tech without paying for it. I mean, you probably don't get it at Ohio State without paying for it either. So it's going to take money to compete. I mean, there are people that quote about, you will not outbid us. Where do they set the goal? And then are they willing to pay to get there? And it sounds like there's no donor fatigue, at least in one donor, there's no donor fatigue. Now, as that quote gets older, maybe there will be. Maybe the checks get bigger and everybody else's checks are getting bigger too. And, you just keep chasing something you don't quite get to. Maybe they will have donor fatigue down the line. But it doesn't sound like it now, and I think that's why – one of the reasons why Brian says that. And maybe it's just a case of, hey, it is a private school and the church leadership has no interest in doing that, so either raise the money privately or content yourself with what you have. Maybe that is it. Maybe there is an absolute wall that, can't be breached there. But if this turns out to be something more normal in college athletics, could it change over time? I mean, we've seen other changes we didn't really expect. At that school, at another school, in conferences. We didn't expect Pac-12 to go away. Here we are. I mean, he says it, and he believes it when he says it today, but what are circumstances going to be like in 5 or 10 years?
I think the name you were thinking of, Jacob Rodriguez, is the other guy.
Yes.
From my experience of knowing Brian in his 20s versus now in his 50s, not much has changed. He just has to. I mean, he's evolved and learned to become a better human being. I've got no problem saying that.
But he's still super competitive.
Right. I think what he's doing is he's learning how to channel that competitiveness in the manner that Tom Homo did. Tom Homo, during his reign, at no point ever embarrassed the university with his competitiveness overflowing. And we see sometimes, a lot of times, that happens with people in the environment. I mean, we just saw it with Ariema.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
I was watching that thing. I was watching that game with my wife, and he goes and has the little dust up with Coach Staley there of South Carolina. And I'm telling her, oh, he's going to come out and apologize tomorrow. Okay, he did, and they made peace, and which I thought, it'll probably take a couple of days, and then everything will go back to normal. They're in a competitive environment. He was mad and furious and blah blah blah. Those things happen. I don't think anything less of Gino Auriemma today than I did versus that statement and Dawn Staley say, I'm going to kick his you-know-what. Yes, she's in the moment. And duh, I'd probably do the same thing. And so, but at BYU, you can't be in that moment. And I think Brian has learned how to channel that competitiveness in the way that Tom Homo did, so he's not embarrassing the university. And then he retires and is going to be leaving here in a few weeks to go back to the Bay Area as a Latter-day Saint mission president. Tom Homo has as much fire as anybody. He's just learned how to channel it. Brian Santiago is wired slightly different, so he's had to learn it, and he's in the process of learning it, and I think he's doing a really good job at learning it, right? But in his core, as you say, he wants to win. So they've got to keep pushing the envelope, because when it comes to winning, they want to win as much as the next guy, whoever the next guy is, whether it's Texas Tech, Indiana, Ohio State, LSU, whatever it might be. They want to do that, but they got to make sure that there's certain criteria that they can hold to, and they can't go overboard. I mean, you look at the Lane Kiffin posting pictures of himself in bathing suits with gorgeous women. That's not going to fly if Kalani Sitake did that. You know what I mean? So those are the different standards. You just can't do that. Lane Kiffin can get away with it because he's kind of an oddball and he's at a public university and they don't have the image. You see it. You see in the Latter-day Saint authorities when they show up to games, they're in suits all the time, right? Yeah. So they have this image, and that's fine. That's their choice. They can do whatever they want. At BYU, you got to do things a certain way. But when it comes to winning, you got to have the cash. That's just a fact now. And it probably was always a fact, but it's obviously far more pronounced now than ever. And to what level do they want to go? And this private equity thing, it doesn't seem like they want to have any connection to that, because then you start inviting influence. And that's where I wanted to go a little bit with the discussion. The word influence, I don't understand how a private equity firm works. I'm a janitor's son, man. And as a high schooler, I was embarrassed like that by that because I was an idiot. Now I can't be more proud of my father that that's what he did. He dropped out of high school to help his family, and that was the situation. And he raised kids and said, go get an education. And we did. And look at us now. Not that I'm anything special, but at least I got that, and I'm living comfortably. So I'm grateful for his desire to impart that wisdom to me and do what he did and made those sacrifices, right? So I don't have any involvement with private equity, and I don't come from money whatsoever. So I can't speak to that, but I know they have influence. And now, and it's related to the U of U, because you said they give up you said if you invite a private equity in, you're going to give up control, which is some control, which is the same word as influence. At the same time, these donors, they want to have influence, even if they're not private equity firms. Maybe they're individual and it's not written down in a contract, but they want to have influence. They want to win. They want to buddy up to people to young men who are way younger than them, obviously, and then they want to have influence. So even if it's not an official private equity, if you accept money from boosters, at what cost do you have to pay when you get that money? That's a fascinating sort of gray area that I'm intrigued by.
It's a super gray area, and I think it's something we see across all of college sports. The people who have the money to give largely got the money because they've been in charge of something, and they are used to being, even if they inherited the money, they've been in charge of the money for however many years since they inherited it. And in a lot of cases, they probably earned it, started a company or whatever, and they're used to having a say, and they want to say, and they may not want the final say. Some might. Some boosters seem more heavy-handed than others. I mean, I think we can all spot one booster who's like literally running the Board of Regents now. That's probably the extreme example of having influence and being in charge. Look at Texas Tech. And their booster literally chairing the Board of Regents. All right. But there's always the old stories since before we even started doing this, PK, of the booster who wrote whatever size check they were writing, 50 years ago, who wanted to fire a coach because that coach wasn't winning, or wanted to hire a coach and was telling the AD and was bending the AD's ear that, hey, this is the next coach. This is who should get it. I mean, those stories are as old as time.
I told you a story that this is years ago, and I won't give up names and I won't give up schools, but it was spoken to me, and it was a while after the fact. It was probably at least 2 years after the fact of when the incident happened. But there was a particular game, and a quarterback did not play well, and there was a booster who came into the locker room and spoke to the coaches and said, we need to make a change. And when I was told that story after the fact, I said, you got to be kidding me. No. I mean, I knew he wasn't kidding me.
Right.
So it was sort of a rhetorical, you got to be kidding me. But that's the influence that they have. And this is going back several years, so don't bother guessing the names because you're probably not going to get it. But yeah, that was before all this, and way before the NIL. But that was a booster who was having money available to donate, and so they want something in return, and that something in return thought to that person that it was appropriate to go in after a tough loss and make that we need to change, make that claim to the professional who is doing this every day. Well, there you go. That's what you got.